Okay.
Okay, so this morning I'm with James Boak, who's going to be joining us in March, the 15th to the 17th, here in Aberdeen. And we're delighted to have you back, James. So thank you for agreeing to come.
I'm
Uh,
always happy to come to Aberdeen. I've had lovely experiences there before, so.
we had a wonderful time last time, so much joy and laughter and deep learning at the same time. So I'm really looking forward to this. So we're just here to chat a little bit about the weekend, give some people an idea of what it involve. Um, so the title of the workshop is Living the Yoga Sutras, Living the Eight Limbs that comes from the Yoga Sutras. And I know you've been studying this for over 20 years. You work from the Sanskrit. What is this about? What does it mean to live the eight limbs?
Good question, Charlie. Thank you. Well, you mentioned in our last workshop, lots of joy, lots of laughter, lots of deep learning. So in the Yoga Sutra, one of the ideas that's communicated is that what is the point of all of this manifest nature? What's the point of our existence? And one way we can understand this is it's for our education, our enjoyment, and our emancipation. So we can become freer of our limiting conditionings and actually express more that which is waiting to be expressed, all of this potential of life that is ready within us. So to learn and to have fun while we're learning is very much in keeping with the spirit of the yogic teachings, because the great research scientists, the great rishis, the seers of the yoga tradition, they were master psychologists. They understood human nature, and they understood that when we're having fun, when we're playful, it allows learning to accelerate that much more quickly. Of course, difficult times can be great teachers, but the assimilation of learning happens most easily when we're relaxed, when we're having fun. So that's just one example of a principle encoded in the Yoga Sutra that can help us meet life more easily, more skillfully. And the eight limbs, this is another of the structures that we find in the Yoga Sutra, and it's just so practical. So I think one way I might kind of illustrate it is like we have all these members in the gang of our being. We have the instrumental powers of our senses that help us see, hear, touch, taste, and smell. We have these instrumental powers that help us express ourselves and speak and move and process and digest and let go of things we no longer need. We have all these instrumental capacities. We have our internal capacities. We have our minds, our emotions, our intellects, all of these different elements in the gang of our being. So the Ashtanga, the eight limbs, they give us this practical means basically to help ensure that when we're doing any type of yoga technique practice, we're actually inviting yoga. By which I mean we're actually inviting all parts of ourselves into the present moment. We're inviting all parts of ourselves to the party of life, you might say. And the best type of party is one where all the parts can rejoice and celebrate and express themselves. Yoga, one of the ways we can understand the meaning, means unity, connecting, gathering, bringing together. So if we want genuine yoga, we have to invite all parts of ourselves. And so the eight limbs give us a really robust structure to help invite all these different parts of ourselves into what we're doing. So oftentimes many people, like, they might start doing yogasana practices and start to notice this is affecting how I behave the rest of the day. I'm noticing I'm moving things around in the house, or when I'm traveling, I'm lifting my suitcase more skillfully. I'm doing it with more awareness. And when I'm talking to my friends or my family members or my colleagues, I'm doing it with a little bit more awareness. I'm tasting with a little bit more awareness. What's going on? And so yoga gives us this very practical, time-tested means to invite more awareness into the day-to-day life. And the idea is if we bring more awareness, then we'll enjoy life more, we'll savor it more, we'll learn more, and we'll also become freer from our limitations because we're learning more and we're getting more insight. So the eight limbs gives us a really practical structure to do that. And on this weekend, we'll situate the eight limbs in the bigger context of the Yoga Sutra. So sutra means stitch, it also means thread, and it refers to these very distilled linguistic formulae through which are communicated this concise teachings of yoga. Very concise, but we can open them up and then apply them to all aspects of life. So we'll consider the 8 limbs in the context of the Yoga Sutra, which my teacher describes so beautifully as the stitches that weave together the fabric of unity. So when we work with these principles, they can help us weave greater harmony into the fabric of our own lives. So over the course of the weekend, we'll get a feel for, we'll get to meet and weave into our own personal understanding these principles and how we can work with them when we're doing yoga technique practices and the rest of the time.
Wonderful. So what will it look like in terms of, with the, let's say, the yoga asana, what will that look like in my, how do we weave in these 8 limbs?
Yeah, so over the course of the weekend, what we will do is we will take recourse to various learning activities. It will be, yes, I'm going to talk about the Yoga Sutra, but don't worry, it's not going to be like 8 hours of lecture on the Yoga Sutra. I will present ideas, we'll have a theoretical overview, but we will bring it to life all the way through. So we'll be exploring through lots of practical exercises. And these exercises, they may take the form of yogic movement and asana. We may do meditative exercises. We will work with other people, with one other person or in a group. We'll do things that work with communication and relating and language. And all these different types of exercise will help us contextualize and realize, wow, how practical and how adaptable and how multi-purpose are these principles. They can support us in all aspects of life. So we'll find as we go along, we're going to be doing multiple things at once. So this is another yogic principle, kind of the opposite of multitasking, but stacking many layers of engagement together. So what we're doing becomes a little bit richer. So we're going to be working with the body and the awareness and the senses all together, for example. And when we do this, this gives us a kind of understanding or a recognition of how, when we do yogasana, we can make it more of a yoga practice. We can help that practice nourish more the deeper layers of our being. So on the opening Friday evening session, we'll kind of give an overview. We'll do some simple yogic movement practices that really help us appreciate the underlying principles that inform all of these yoga posture practice modalities. So maybe people will be familiar with the term Hatha yoga. So Hatha, sun, moon, hot, cold, expansion, contraction, engagement, release, these pairs of opposites. So all through the yoga teachings, and this we also find in the Yoga Sutra, and in the Ashtanga, in the 8 limbs, we have the idea of yoga is the harmonization of these pairs of opposites. Pairs of opposites, day, night, growth, decay, birth, death. This is completely intrinsic to the human experience and to life. We cannot escape these things that come and go. Life is coming and going. That's what it does. Life is change. But we can learn to work with the cycles and the pulsations skillfully. That's one of the main things that Hatha Yoga tries to do. And so as we start to understand more these Hatha Yoga principles, we'll start to realize, any type of yogasana practice, any type of physical discipline, once I understand these principles, I can start to optimize. That's rather a businessy word, but I can start to make the most of my time working with any discipline, any type of playful exploration. So I make it more yoga. I can make it more deeply nourishing and more educative for me. So I can enjoy it more. I can feel more lasting benefit from it just by harnessing these principles. So then on the Saturday and Sunday in the morning sessions, we'll give quite a lot of time to yogic movement exploration. And we won't do the same things that people, it's not like, oh, you're going to do the same practice you do in your normal class. You have I know you've all got great teachers there already. I'm not going to try and do what Charlie and Ollie are doing. It's like some of the things may be exactly the same or may be very similar. You'll be working to some degree with the lexicon of Hatha Yoga postures, but we'll also do different things. And the reason we'll do that is to help us understand the principles. So then when you come back to your regular practice, you've got hopefully a refined, deeper understanding of those principles. So then you can get even more benefit, even more juice, even more relish, even more flavor when you're working with these tremendously rich techniques and modalities. And also, because we work in some different ways, hopefully you will expand your yogic toolkit. So some of the things that we practice and explore through will be some simple sequences of saluting the sun in a very simple way that you can then do if you just got 5 minutes, or you don't have a yoga mat, you don't need to change your clothes, you just want to be outside, get a little bit of energy, you just want to refresh. You'll learn lots of little things, like, so we'll do things that may be a bit different from what people are used to in yoga classes, but they're very complementary and they're all informed by the same principles. So if you like doing Ashtanga Vinyasa yoga, or you like doing Iyengar yoga, whatever style of yoga it is, the work that we do will be complementary, let's say. It won't be going against any of that. It'll be giving you tools to enhance that. And then we'll also do some meditative inquiry exercises. We'll work with other people. So you mentioned, Charlie, last time it was lots of joy and laughter and learning. And so in the afternoons, as well as some inquiry exercises, one of the other things about yoga that people maybe not be so aware of is that the whole tradition is based on inquiry. Maybe people have heard of the Upanishads. So Upanishad literally means to sit down close to, so we can listen to each other, we can learn together. And the idea in yoga is if we want to learn, we have to make ourselves, there's this beautiful word, patra. It means literally leaf in the Sanskrit language. But in India still, and in many parts of the world, drinking vessels were fashioned from leaves. You eat off a banana leaf, perhaps. So when you make the drinking vessel out of the patra, you want to make sure the patra is empty. If my friend has made some beautiful warming soup, and I go with my patra cup or bowl, and the bowl is full of water, I cannot receive that warming soup. It says when we turn towards learning, when we turn towards inquiry, we do so with this attitude of apprenticeship, studentship, curiosity, inquiry. So we'll do exercises where we kind of adopt this inquiring, curious attitude, and we listen to each other and we learn from each other. And we'll also bring that attitude to the movement work, and also we will do some work with sound. So we'll do some singing and some kirtan during the weekend. And hopefully, amongst other things, there's so many amazing benefits to this. But amongst other things, this will dispel some of those lies that so many people were told, like you cannot sing or you have no voice for singing, because really everybody does to some degree. Or maybe you were told an even worse lie. There you were as a little child, your heart was beating happily along, and the teacher said you've no rhythm because you couldn't manage the whatever rhythm they were doing in the music class at school. So many people have been told terrible lies about things to do with sound and singing. And to me, this is really terrible, because singing is so good for our health. And only a few generations back, most people would sing in a group most days. When we sing together, something magical happens. There's lots of scientific documentation of this now. When people sing together, it's very good for health in so many different ways. But additionally, with the kirtan and the Samskrita sounds, these well-made, well-formed sounds, when we voice them, they have this very cleansing effect through all the layers of our being. So over the weekend, my intention is to help facilitate an experience for all of us. We can really enjoy, savor, benefit from working together, working in harmony, learning from each other. So it's going to be very refreshing for our perspective, very energizing, inspiring. And at the same time, we're going to have fun, we're going to have joy and laughter, and we're going to learn. We're going to get new perspectives, and we'll leave the weekend with things we can continue to explore and make our own through our own authentic explorations, but explorations that are grounded in a certain type of understanding that we've come to experience over the weekend. I don't know if I answered the question, Charlie, but
Yeah.
but
No,
basically, sorry, go on.
I was going to say, it's been something from coming to your workshops that I have really benefited from, is finding a voice and singing. It's a very cathartic and therapeutic thing, I think, to sing and to sing in a group. And it's something I've really incorporated into my own practice and my life. Just feel like I sing more, and it brings joy. And that's one of the things you were talking about how when you're trying to dig into living the eight limbs, how does it impact your life and the positive effects it has? And I feel like a much more confident person because I don't feel afraid of singing.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm really pleased that you're including singing in this workshop because you have a wonderful voice and it's lovely to learn from you. One of the other things I think you're very gifted at is storytelling. Will there be many stories in this workshop?
Well, I mean, there are always stories, yeah. So stories are such an intrinsic part of the yogic teaching method. And I was very fortunate when I first really started to get into yoga. It's the early 2000s. I didn't realize how fortunate I was at the time, but I met a teacher who was a direct student of two great Indian masters last century. And when he was called Larry, he was an American man, but he'd gone as a teenager to study with Maharishi Mahesh Yogi in the 1970s. And then he'd become a disciple of a great Kashmiri master called Swami Laxmanju. And so Larry had been steeped in lots of these teachings for many, many years when in his later teenage years and early 20s. And then he's been practicing ever since. When I met him, he'd been practicing daily for 30 years. And when he would give satsang, there would always be these amazing stories. And it would just bring the teachings so to life. This is actually one of the things that motivated me to start learning Sanskrit, because I'd read Yoga Sutra in translation and I'd managed to glean that there's a lot of practical, useful stuff here, but I know I'm not quite getting it. I'd studied French and Italian for my first degree, and I knew that even when I translate something from French to English or Italian to French, whatever it might be, these very proximate languages, things get lost in translation. So I knew that from Sanskrit, which is this very different language, to English, I know I'm not getting the full picture. Anyway, when Larry spoke about the text, they just came so alive. And that made me want to learn. But in his satsangs, there would always be these stories. And to me, this is part of the pragmatism of the the great rishis of the Indian tradition. They recognize that we learn via stories really, really well. But it's at the same time, we can find the teachings, like Yoga Sutra is ultra distilled. It's not a book of stories. It's a book of these almost like formulas that's super distilled. And yet, when studied traditionally, these will be illustrated with stories. So I'm sure there will be some storytelling. Uh, which ones? Let's see. The thing about a program like this, I prepare to be spontaneous. We're going to explore the eight limbs in application, and I'll have there's a very thorough, let's say, overview of what we're going to explore. But then what emerges is going to be a co-creation. And that's a lovely thing about working in this way, is that we're all learning together and we co-create the experience together. But I think it's likely there will be stories, yeah.
Good, I'm glad to hear it. And so who is this workshop for? Who can come?
Um, I would say, anybody who is interested in anything I've said so far, you don't need to be like sometimes people have this idea, oh, it's for people who are advanced. Well, yoga is just about being a human being. It's just about learning to be more who we really are, to access our deeper selves, to access our underlying potential and integrate it into the context of our lives. So if you are new to yoga, if you've been practicing longer than I've been alive, I'm 46, you're most welcome. And what I've found, I've had students, my oldest student's in her 90s now. She taught yoga for 40 years. And I've worked with people, it's their first contact with yoga in the same workshops because it's all principle based. So the way that we explore, whether you're brand new or whether you're very seasoned and you've been exploring in lots of different ways for many, many years. My teacher said to me a long time ago, he said, one time I was giving a presentation on the Bhagavad Gita, and this was my first time I ever taught on the Gita. I didn't want to do it, I didn't think I was ready. But I'd been asked to by a group. I'd done a course with them on the Yoga Sutra. By that time, I'd translated this sutra text. I'd studied it with my teacher for more than a year, all the time, every week, 2 or 3 sessions. and I translate it with my Sanskrit teacher. I've been practicing methods within the text for quite some time. So I felt, okay, I'm ready to share this with a group now. Let's explore together. And the Gita, I didn't feel ready. But my teacher said, no, they've asked you to do it. You should do it. You've been working with the text. Go on. And at the first session, one of the participants, one of the women who'd been most insistent that we do this course, she brought a friend of hers who had written an encyclopedia of Hinduism. And she asked me a question, and the question, it was a bit of a tough question. I was like, oh, I wish my teacher was here. He'd know how to answer this so elegantly. And afterwards I said to him, I told him the question, I told him how I answered it. And I knew that I haven't thought about this enough. It's not, I haven't explored this enough to be in the position of the teacher for this course. And then he said to me, he said, James, she may have written an encyclopedia of Hinduism, but she's never heard what you have to say about it before. She came because she's interested in expanding her perspective. And this is the beautiful thing. We can all learn from each other. So when we come together, I used to teach in a university and in Thailand, teaching English. From my students, I learned so much about English because the way they would approach it, the way they would work with the language. It's so, this is a very roundabout way of saying anybody who's interested in inviting deeper harmony, cohesion, balance, awareness into life and being playful and explorative along the way. Hope to see you 15th to 17th of March in Aberdeen.
Perfect. So there's no need for any Yoga Sutra knowledge prior to coming.
No need for any particular knowledge of Sanskrit or Yoga Sutras or yoga postures or meditation. You don't need to be able to stand on your head or sit in any particular posture. It's just if you're ready to explore and you're ready to move a little bit, everything that we do will be scalable. So some of the techniques or practices we explore, we might demonstrate different ways of doing them because it's all stemming from a principle. So you can do it a bigger version, a smaller version, a more energetic version, a more calming version, for example. And when it comes to the text and its application, that's all going to be related in a way that's very accessible and that relates to the context of our lives. So yeah, whether you're brand new or you've been practicing for 50 years, my experience of working in this format, where it's this very holistic, I would call it yogic learning, that, one of the things, I used to be a school teacher, university teacher, and a long time ago, I came to think, I can't teach anybody anything. My job when I was a teacher is what I need to do, what I need to apprentice myself to, is facilitating or fostering a situation in which learning is more likely to occur. And so when I was teaching at the university, for example, and previously in schools, I wanted to create a situation where many different learning styles and learning intelligences are all getting activated. And this is the yogic method. Yoga means to include, to gather all our parts, like we mentioned before. Our physical capacities, our emotional capacities, our mental, intellectual, sensory capacities, all of these things, let them all be included. So we will have a theoretical overview, but we're going to be exploring very pragmatically, very actively. And there'll be time and space for reflection. There'll be some quiet time over the weekend too. So active, pragmatic, theoretical, and reflective learning styles are involved or included. And then we're going to be working, I'll be talking sometimes, so there'll be auditory learning. There'll be visual learning. There'll be kinesthetic learning. There'll be tactile learning because we're moving in space and in relation to each other. There's going to be sound and rhythm and vibration. So we're going to be working with all the senses, the body, the mind, the emotions, the whole human being. And what I found in this way, it doesn't really matter what background a person has, because we all have background in being ourselves, in incarnating this bodily vehicle of what it means to be human. And this is an opportunity to explore how we might experience this slightly differently, maybe in a way that we can enjoy even more and learn even more from.
Fantastic. I'm so excited. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. It's a lovely space there in Aberdeen, and like I mentioned, I've been there. It's quite quite a long time now, probably at least more than a decade that I've been sharing in Aberdeen and had lots of great experiences there. So hope to see some people I've met there before and many new people this March.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, we'll see you in March.
Okay. Thank you very much, Charlie. Looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Thank you.